Welcome to the Outdoor View. I'm Wanda, your host for today, and I'd like to introduce my co-host and husband, Bill Gaines.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today, Bill. And I have to tell you that Maria and I are so pleased that you have agreed to be part of the Outdoor View team. We just welcome the experience that you have in helping educate others on why it's important to have a voice in the outdoor industry, And so, but right off the bat, I want to let the viewers know that we have not practiced this. It's raw footage and we're just going to wing it. But with all the experience that you have, 30 plus years, we know that we cannot cover everything about you in a 20-minute interview. So we're going to cover a few things here. I want to bring it down to basics. And I want to shout out to those people who haven't had much experience or exposure in the outdoor industry and kind of reach out to them and get their thoughts going and be open for any questions they may have. They can always contact us with questions, but let's move on. You've been a huge voice for the outdoor industry for 30 plus years. And what I'd like you to share with the viewers right now is how did you get involved in the outdoor industry, and tell them how it led you to where you're at today.
It's your fault, but I love you for it. Back in the day, I was working for the defense industry. And, I came home from work one night and you had been flipping through the newspaper that day looking at classified ads. Well, you had stumbled upon an ad for a statewide conservation hunting organization that was looking for a director of government affairs. So I walked in the door and you showed me the ad, which you had clipped out of the paper, and you said, "Hey, aren't you a member of this organization?" And I looked and I go, "Yeah, I am." "Well, they're looking for a director of government affairs." And I went, "Oh, what a dream it would be to be able to work in the industry and pastime that I care so deeply about, which is hunting." So in no time, I freshened up my resume, sent it in, applied for the job, and got an interview. And a few interviews later, I ended up getting the job.
You sure did.
Yeah.
It's funny thinking back on that, but it didn't hurt that the guy who hired you had a wife named Wanda.
Yeah, that was interesting. Out here in California, that's a very, very rare name. And sure enough, he did have a wife named Wanda. And the uniqueness of us both being married to Wanda, certainly, was recognized by him as well, because he even brought it up in our first interview. I remember that. So that might have played a role in me getting the job.
He was a great guy too.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. At any rate, Bill, for 30 plus years, I have seen you spend day after day after day walking the halls of the state capitol so passionately, dealing with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, dealing with the Fish and Game Commission on helping create policies and making decisions for people who love being in the outdoors. And, I was thinking that a lot of times people form strong opinions based on emotions, And so, like I said, I want to bring your 30 years way down to basics, because there's viewers out there, I'm sure, that haven't had exposure and experience, and I want to speak to them. Some of them, and I want this to be a safe place where they feel like they're welcome and they can ask questions or whatever, this is the place, the Outdoor View. So at any rate, a lot of times people who are not experienced or educated in this area, they will quite often promote wanting more regulations and more laws that circle around hunting and being an outdoor enthusiast. But yet those same people, all too often, many of them go to the store and will buy their turkeys, their animal meat, turkeys and chickens and things like that from the store. Whereas a hunter is working hand in hand with the state on wildlife management. It's all scientific. And, we're also blessed to be able to partake in such a resource. In fact, if you look at Genesis 27:3, if you guys are believers out there, No judgment on anyone who's not a believer, but I'm just saying, if you are, and I am, in Genesis 27:3, it talks about way back in the beginning, go out, get your quiver and your bow, go out to the field and hunt wild game for me.
Right.
And so, on that note, just knowing that God created this world and the way that he intended on us, to feed our families is such a natural way. And it just seems so crazy, Bill, that you're out there fighting for that, on a daily basis, and trying to maintain those traditions that are way back from the beginning, every time you're dealing with those different, whether it be the Capitol, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, or the Fish and Game Commission. Mm-hmm. And so at any rate, I often wonder, those people who are believing so passionately that there needs to be more laws and regulations. What I want to ask all of you who are watching and feel that way, what I want to ask you is, do you know, before you're promoting, such strong opinions, do you know what the current laws and regulations are right now for hunters who are enjoying, our outdoor traditions and going out there and working hand in hand with the state and being legal citizens and, do you know what those laws and regulations are? And I can't help but think a lot of people don't know, Bill, exactly what it takes. Let's say, I'm going to use a duck hunter, for example. Some people might be watching right now. And when they think of someone going duck hunting, and some of these people in the last 35 years, I've met people who don't like guns. They don't like hunting. They don't like people who hunt, and they don't like someone who shoots an animal. And so, I'd just like you to educate them a little bit, Bill, on what goes into being able to walk out the door with a gun and go shoot a duck. Because I'm pretty confident there are people sitting out there watching who are thinking, oh, you just go grab your gun and set out to shoot a duck for the day. So let's start at rock bottom basics and let's let people know what a hunter has to go through to be able to walk out the door with that gun and go shoot a duck.
I'd be happy to do that. Hunting is not like bowling or golfing or all the rest of the pastimes out there that you can just go out and do without any kind of prerequisite, if you will. Hunting is by far and away the most heavily regulated pastime out there, bar none. If you're going to hunt, first thing you have to do is get a hunting license. And in order to get a hunting license, you have to take a mandatory minimum 10-hour course that dives deeply into wildlife management, wildlife conservation, firearms safety, because in most cases, you're going to use a firearm if you're out hunting. How to handle your animal once it's been harvested, the ethics of in the field, how to otherwise be safe in the field. It's a very lengthy course that dives deeply into all of those topics. In fact, I'm a hunter education instructor, so I'm very familiar with it. It's a very comprehensive course that frankly, I wish everybody had to take because it's very informative. But that aside, once you take that mandatory minimum 10-hour course, you have to pass a very rigorous test with a very high 80% mark in order to get what we call a hunter safety certificate. Once you've got that hunter safety certificate, you can use that to go out and buy your hunting license. Well, hunting licenses, they don't just hand out. You do have to buy them. Currently in California, an adult hunting license is over $50. So there's a pretty heavy expense right there. Now, I think you used the example of what to take to go out and hunt ducks. Well, once you've got that hunting license, if you want to hunt ducks, you've got to go out, you've got to buy your state duck stamp. That's an additional expense. You've got to buy your federal duck stamp, another additional expense, and you need to be absolutely up to speed on what the regulations are dealing with hunting. Now, regulations are what the Fish and Game Commission develops in concert with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they're done on an annual basis because regs are based on science. Every year, it's incumbent upon the department and the commission to look deeply into the health of these species, the health of their habitats, and based on the health of the bird populations, in this case, bird populations or whatever species you may be in pursuit of, they will develop regulations to ensure that the harvest of birds or deer or whatever the species may be is sustainable and something that will not have a negative impact on the population. So they change every year, and it's incumbent upon the hunter to know what they are, and they are extremely complicated. I can assure you of that. So hunting is really a commitment. If you're going to go out and hunt ducks or anything else, it's a commitment. You need to know the regulations, and you need to, of course, have purchased all of your stamps and tags, and of course, have your hunting license. And where that money goes is back into the ground, helping the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service do the research necessary to develop those science-based regulations, in addition to restoration, enhancement, and maintenance of habitats for those species and all species out there, whether they be game and non-game.
So it sounds like the hunters contribute quite a lot as far as financially speaking to the wildlife industry and the habitat efforts. And it most certainly sounds like, even though they contribute so much, it most certainly sounds like they've got a huge responsibility on their shoulders for having to keep up with the laws and regulations. Otherwise, if they get out in the field and they have a brain fart and they're not paying attention on what they should or shouldn't be doing, they're in trouble.
Absolutely. The laws and regulations that are developed for hunting, if you violate one of those, you're every bit as guilty as if you created some type of violation on the roadways or any other manner of life. I mean, they are heavily enforced, and there's law enforcement out in the field to make sure that people are abiding by those rules and regulations.
Wow. Well, I hope that this is really informative for those who haven't had the experience or education along these lines, because that's what we want to do at the Outdoor View. I hope it's helpful. So Bill, I know that you always make a practice when you're out in the field of being extremely respectful and thanking God for the animal that you are, blessed to take home and put on the table for our family.
Right.
And I love that. And I know there's other people out there that operate in the same way when they go out hunting. And so, but there are times when certain individuals give hunters a bad name. And I've watched that, and it tears my heart out sometimes because people just don't understand. And I'd kind of like you to touch upon that a little bit and tell people how that happens.
No, I'd be happy to. That's a good question. Well, California over the course of the last 100 years has become very heavily urbanized. 80% of California's population today lives in the big cities. They live in the San Francisco Bay Area, Los Angeles area, and so forth. And unlike 100 years ago, when almost everybody either hunted themselves or knew somebody that hunted, and they were familiar with hunting for one reason or another, today that's not the case. The overwhelming majority that live in these urban centers have absolutely no exposure to hunting through no fault of their own, right? But problem is, the one exposure that they do have is the negative side. And that's the small fraction of a percentage of people that are out in the field that are not abiding by the wildlife rules. Those aren't hunters. Those are poachers. Major distinction between the two. But they're the ones that'll grab the headlines. They're the ones that will end up on the evening news in the city. They're the ones that'll end up on the front page of the newspaper in the city. They're the ones that'll be splashed all over Facebook. So that's why a lot of people have, unfortunately, that live in these cities have formed negative opinions about hunting and what it does, and what it doesn't do. Again, those are poachers, not hunters. On the positive side, in my opinion, the most wholesome thing a family can do together is to go out hunting and be with nature as one. That doesn't grab the headlines. That's not newsworthy. The other thing, hunting has a very proud tradition. We touched upon the revenue streams that hunting generates year in and year out through the purchase of hunting licenses, stamps, tags, and so forth for whatever species you want to hunt. That's what built the state wildlife area system in California. That's what pays for its management year in and year out. A lot of that isn't hunted. Some of it is, but only during the season, right? But it funds that entire effort. On the federal side, the National Wildlife Refuge System was built by hunters, and it is maintained through hunter dollars as well. And those lands benefit not only game species, but non-game species as well. And that's not even to consider the lands that are set aside and managed for habitat that are in private ownership, with hunting being the sole incentive. So there's a massive amount of positive stories associated with hunting. Unfortunately, those don't grab headlines. The ones that do are when people are breaking the law. And again, those aren't hunters, those are poachers. And they're such a small percentage. But unfortunately,
Well,
those people
you
here.
know, there's so much that people who have not been exposed to hunting that they don't know. And you're right, because the media always hears about the negative side of things, you know, but bringing things down to basics again, and wanting to resonate with people who have not had a lot of exposure and experience, you know, I know that for some people, you know, they go, oh, a hunter shoots an animal, a poacher shoots an animal, you know, and they have a hard time separating that. And I've always felt that the analogy of, you know, when a bank robber goes into a bank and kills someone, shoots someone, you don't see the media out there going, oh, the bankers killed someone at the bank. It's a bank robber who killed someone.
Right.
And
Big
so,
difference.
you know, it's the same type of situation. And, you know, I just think it's very important for those folks who are involved in the media to be more educated and understand the difference, and, you know, refer to poaching in the way that it needs to be referred to, because it's illegal, and refer to hunters in a way that's respectful and the way that they deserve. They're legal abiding citizens, you know. So at any rate, Bill, thank you for giving us that insight. I know that one of the goals here at the Outdoor View is to provide a huge voice for our viewers when you're out there battling to help keep everyone in the outdoors and maintaining our outdoor traditions. And so I know how needed that is. And I'll reiterate the fact that throughout all these years, I have known people who go out and you know, they enjoy the resources, bring in home food to their families, and they're not involved. But tell people how those people who do not want to be involved in the politics, tell them how you're going to help them have a voice.
Oh, absolutely. I'm also going to tell them why it's so important that we have their voice.
Thank
As you know, I've been blessed with the ability to work in the policy arenas where laws which impact wildlife management and hunting and so forth and regulations are defined. But as California becomes more urbanized, those arenas, state capital, perfect example, become more and more urbanized as well. I mean, the overwhelming majority of legislators at our state capital are from urban centers, and they have the same misunderstandings regarding hunting and sporting arms that the constituents that elect them do. It's probably so when we go into hearings there, typically the room is full of people that are anti-hunting or anti-firearm and so forth, have no knowledge of wildlife management, and those decisions are largely made on emotions, not on facts. So when I go in there, I'm typically one of maybe 2 or 3 people that are there fighting for the future of hunting, and the rest of the room is full of those that aren't. So here's where the typical hunter can help us. And I know people just want to go out and hunt and they don't want to get involved in politics. Politics is scary, hard to understand, and so forth and so on. But one of the goals, my top goal with the Outdoor View, is to do all the heavy lifting for the typical hunter that just wants to go out and hunt. Do all the heavy lifting for them as far as the politics of hunting, what's being considered by the legislature or by the Fish and Game Commission, break it down into bare bones, explain to them in a sentence or two why it's important to them that a certain decision is made on that issue, and tell them how they can get a hold of their legislator or representative in regards to what their opinion is. Right now, a lot of people are afraid to dive into that because they don't know what to do or how to do it. We're going to do the heavy lifting. We're going to lift the burden off of them of trying to understand all this. We're going to make it simple. And with just a matter of a few seconds a day, the typical hunter can be actively engaged in helping to influence positive pro-wildlife, pro-hunting decisions down at the state capitol or in front of the Fish and Game Commission. I'm really excited about that.
I am too. I know that something like this is so needed right now, because I know that the fight, although we've been doing really well, the fight is getting harder and harder. And so, we need to be united with one large voice. And I'm so excited that the Outdoor View is going to entertain that and help people be able to have a voice without having to get super duper involved.
Right.
I just think it's awesome. So,
Well, make no mistake about it. If you like to hunt, you need to know that hunting is under greater and greater attack every year. There's no question about that. And it's incumbent upon us to take that challenge on and get active and make sure that we stand our ground.
Exactly. And so I know that if people understand the importance and they're passionate about our outdoor traditions, they need to get engaged. And you're going to make that simple. And we're just excited about that. And we just need to make sure people know. And let's unite our voice and make it loud. So is there anything else that you need to touch upon before we go, Bill?
Yeah, no, there's a couple other things that I'm really excited in, that the Outdoor View is going to do that really make me want to get heavily engaged with this website. Is the other thing is regulations, as I mentioned a few moments ago, they change every year. I don't care if you're talking deer, elk, sheep, ducks, quail, across the board, they make changes pretty much every year. Because the science is changing on these, the health of populations, the health of their habitats, it changes every year. So we adapt to that and we adjust our regulations accordingly. So if people aren't paying attention to what the current regulations are for whatever species they want to hunt, they need to be plugged in on that because they need to stay within the law or there'll be enforcement problems, right? The Outdoor View is going to make that simple as well. Trust me, I'm an expert in this arena and I know how difficult it is to go and figure out exactly what the regulations are for any given year. You have to dig deeply into mounds and mounds of documents to find out what they actually are. We're going to provide that to them in very straight, easy to read fashion, tell them exactly what the regs are so that they can make sure that they're current on the regulations. The last thing that really excites me, we talked about folks that live in the urban areas that through no fault of their own have had little or no exposure to hunting other than the negative poaching side, which again isn't hunting. The Outdoor View is going to serve as an educational tool, if you will, an educational vehicle that they can tap into and learn more about wildlife management, the role of hunting and conservation, and just how hunting regulations are defined and how they're done in a way that promotes the health of wildlife for years to come.
That's so awesome. So awesome. One-stop shop.
You're right. Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us today, Bill. And
sure.
It's been fun talking with you and bringing things down to basics. I know it might have been a little too basic, but I just want to make sure we're reaching people that may have questions or that don't have the exposure and experience. And so again, thank you. And if you could tell our viewers how they can keep in touch with us.
Absolutely. And please do early and often. Our website, www.theoutdoorview.org. Make sure that you visit us frequently there and on our Facebook page.
Exactly. And if you guys wouldn't mind subscribing to our YouTube page, and we hope that you'll share this information with all your friends and on social media, invite, share, whatever you do, but we really enjoyed you all joining us on the Outdoor View today, and we hope to see you next week.